that wasn't fun. But it's okay. Don't panic.
Did someone say panic?
No, I think I explicitly said don't panic.
No. I think you said panic. No, I'm pretty sure you said panic.
Seriously, please don't do it. I'm gonna start panicking now. I really have no power here, do I?
The end is near. The end is near.
Well, hockey is officially back. Golden Knights finally took to the ice for their first full preseason game. And oh boy, was it an ugly one as they fall to the San Jose Sharks 5-2.
The end is near. The end is
Honestly,
near.
with this guy, we win the Stanley Cup, and the first thing that happens that doesn't go well, he's phoning it in like the season's over. Yeah, 5-2 wasn't a great outcome, but it's the first game of the preseason. And when you look at the roster that the Golden Knights put on the ice last night, it's not really much of a surprise why the scoreline was what it was. If my eyes don't deceive me, there's only 4 NHL regulars in this lineup. And while I don't have the San Jose Sharks lineup card on me personally, just watching the game tells me that they weren't exactly pulling out, they weren't calling up their AHL filler guys to give them a look like the Golden Knights were. Hurdle was out there. I know Duclair was out there. Philip Zadina was out there. They were pulling out all of the players that you would reasonably assume will be on the Sharks opening night roster in 2 weeks. And so this outcome was almost to be expected, but we may as well go break it down bit by bit and just see where things went right or horribly, horribly wrong for the Golden Knights in the preseason opener. And if only I could have watched the game from the beginning, I would have a better understanding of just how poorly the start of the game went. But thanks to regional coverage, thanks to the NHL Network, and thanks to the New York Rangers and Boston Bruins preseason game running long, I wasn't able to join the watch party of watching the game on TV until 5 minutes had elapsed in the first period, and the Golden Knights were already down 1. Now, I've found out recently, and by recently I mean just a few hours before recording this, that the goal was scored in the first minute, which it's not great. That's not the way you want to start your preseason, giving up a goal in the first minute of the 23-24 season. And then, lo and behold, the first thing that I see when I do finally get to start watching the game is Daniil Chayka taking a penalty and Tomas Hertl scoring on the ensuing power play to give the Sharks a 2-0 lead. And yeah, it never feels good to have a rookie with so much promise as Chayka take a penalty like that and have it immediately wind up in the back of your own net. But that's just kind of the way things are. And if you leave Hertl alone with that much space, you're going to get moments like that. And as much as Yuri Patera did really, really well last season in the couple of starts he made in the regular season, he kind of got left out to dry on this one, and I don't blame him. Just like he got left out to dry on the next one just a few minutes later, as a very strange bouncing puck in the middle of the ice kind of found a Sharks player completely by himself. I believe it was Todd, had just no one around him. I'm not entirely sure how the puck got there, but it went through a sea of legs and wound up being Patera versus the Sharks forward, and I think we all know how that one went. 3-0 San Jose Sharks. Super early doors on this one. Of course, after that barrage by the Sharks earlier on in the game, the first period began to calm down a little bit. And mercifully for the Golden Knights, they avoided staying out of the box for a little bit until they went right back into the box and Geertsen took a penalty. I've never even heard of this guy. I think he's like high-level Savannah, low-level American League. But I'd never seen him before, and he took what I can comfortably say was a very, very stupid penalty, very, very far away from his own net. It was actually below the offensive goal line, and there was absolutely no reason that he should have taken it, but ultimately it was a cross-check. Mercifully for the Golden Knights this time around, they don't give up the power play goal. It's their first penalty kill of the season. Yay. And ultimately, that felt like it may have been a turning point, as just a few minutes after the penalty was killed, Pavel Dorofeev found a puck kind of below the goal line in the offensive zone, basically shrugged off a check and fed a backhand pass into the front of the slot where Ivan Barbashev was there. We got a Russian connection forming here, and he's able to kind of take a puck through a sea of people and wrist it past Kakinen, ultimately putting the Golden Knights on the board, scoring the first goal of the 23-24 preseason. And it couldn't have come from a better guy. Granted, there was only a 1 in 4 chance of a full-time Golden Knights player scoring the first goal of this preseason. So I'm just going to leave that stat there. It's still amazing how few NHL regulars we put in this game. And it felt to this point in the game that Patera was starting to settle in. He was starting to make some good saves. And when the Golden Knights went back on the penalty kill by way of a Benson penalty, he even made a couple of really flashy saves. He robbed Barabanov right in front of the net. And even though the puck was kind of going wide, he sprawled across and he made a couple of, big waves at it, which probably perturbed the Sharks forward. But ultimately, that whole body of work would get washed away by something just a few seconds later as a kind of weak shot would come in from the point, and it must have dipped like a foot away from the net as it went just below Patera's blocker from very far away, basically from the blue line, squeezed past him and put the Sharks up by 3 again. So yeah, not the greatest first period for the Golden Knights, and really not the greatest period for Jiri Patera. And so after 20 minutes of the first preseason game, what are the takeaways? Well, the biggest takeaway is the Golden Knights are down 4-1, and that is exactly what's going to happen when you start what is essentially an all-rookie team against what is pretty much 70 to 80% of the Sharks' opening night roster. So this is kind of a to-be-expected outcome, and I don't blame the coaches. I don't blame even the players. The skill gap was just way too big. They've got players, Declare, Zadina, Hurdle. They've got all these big-name players that are going to be on banners and towels and promotion materials at the SAP Center for the whole season, and the most high-profile player the Golden Knights have in the lineup is Shea Theodore. So it's not the end of the world. The best thing that they can do now is trying to grow from it and learn and adjust into the second period and try and make a little bit more magic happen. It's never too late for a comeback, especially against the Sharks. The second period opened for both teams with a lot of haste. Zadina opened the period for the Sharks with a rip from the top of the right circle, which Patera just sprawled across to get with the top part of his blocker. And just a few seconds after that, Dorofeev would find himself alone on a feed from Ivan Barbashev behind the defense on a partial breakaway, which would also subsequently be saved. And just as it seemed the Golden Knights were getting some semblance of a momentum, they took another penalty, their fourth one of the game. Contrary to all the other ones, this was actually a really, really quiet power play for the Sharks. They only mustered really one scoring opportunity, and it came from an absolute howitzer by Duclair, who's still probably upset that he lost the Stanley Cup final just a few months ago. There was some anger behind that shot, but ultimately it wound up in the goaltending paraphernalia of one Jiri Patera. Now, it's at this part that I have to talk about the one big major glaring mistake that some of the Golden Knights' most optimistic prospects made in this period. Now, Brendan Brisson, great player. Max Comtois, great player. But when you put them together on this play, they made an oopsie. Brendan Brisson took a pass that was on the half wall, and he tried to do something with it. I'm not entirely sure what he was doing, but he tried to send the puck somewhere. And that somewhere wound up being right to a San Jose Shark, who was just flying down towards Golden Knights' net. And ultimately, having not noticed this, Max Comtois massively out of position. And so he's a step behind the guy who's now streaking in to the far side of the net. And you don't need to be great at hockey, and all you need is a relative understanding of geometry, and you know how this is going to wind up. Brisson to the Sharks player was the tick. The Sharks player to the Sharks player who beat Comtois was the tack. And the Sharks player that got behind Comtois put it in the back of the net for the goal. It's pretty simple. So yeah, not the brightest of moments given that all four of the players that are fighting for Riley Smith's roster spot was in this game, and one of them already has a primary assist on the Golden Knights' only goal of this game. Obviously, up to this point, Paul Cotter looked okay, and, Comtois and Brisson just made this massive mistake that led to a goal, and Dorofeev looks great. Really hard to tell, really hard to take away anything through this part of the game, and ultimately, the Golden Knights would actually answer back just a few minutes after this massive kerfuffle, as Chaco would take a long shot from the point and it would get tipped in front. Originally, it was credited to Chaco, but ultimately later on, I believe in the third period, the score was amended to say Brett Howden got his stick on it. And so, as we have seen in the description of the video, this being the last goal the Golden Knights scored, not a single prospect got a goal, but two of the higher rated prospects got primary assists on goals by more established NHL veterans and reigning Stanley Cup champions. Yes, I'm going to be saying that a lot this preseason. Get used to it. Towards the end of the second period, the Golden Knights would go on to a power play as Max Comtois would get a very late hit low to the body. He went down for a little bit. I think he got the wind knocked out of him. I was afraid that he got injured in his first game on a PTO, and that would just be kind of the end of his career, and that would be really bad. But ultimately, he was able to get back up and get out on the power play. How'd the power play do, you might ask? We don't talk about the power play. We're not going to talk about the power play. We didn't give up a goal. We didn't score a goal. That's all there is to say about it. So two of the bigger takeaways from this second period of play is, first off, the Golden Knights youth still is very youthful, and by that I mean prone to mistakes. I've already highlighted the mistake Brisson made and the mistake Comtois made, and a lot of the defensemen were making mistakes, especially the younger guys. And this kind of feeds into the second thing about the second period is, and this is more of a comment about the game as a whole to this point, stop taking penalties. Please stop taking penalties. Please stop taking penalties. The third period for the Golden Knights started with a goaltending change, which I'm sure was expected. It's not Patera's fault that you'd given up 5 to this point, and it's never a bad thing to get to see what other people's got. So Vikman enters the game, and he looked okay throughout large stretches of the third period. Ultimately, he wound up keeping the Sharks scoreless, and I'm going to be really brief on this third period because not a lot happened. The Sharks took 2 penalties, neither of which were great penalties, neither of which were smart penalties, neither of which were breaking up odd man rushes. Actually, I think they took a third one later in the period. And really the only highlight of this third period was how well the Golden Knights played with Vikman on the bench with a couple of minutes to go. They pulled him early and managed to go pretty large chunks of the game without giving up a goal, unless I missed it. I kind of tuned out what was happening later on in the game because it was over and I was watching the prospects, and the prospects weren't having a great game either. And so seeing all the NHL guys, plus Dorofeev, on the ice with the goalie out was actually a nice change of pace as they showed relative chemistry. They had a lot of good opportunities, and if it weren't for the Sharks having a relatively passable goalie at this point, they actually could have been able to claw back into the game and make it interesting. But ultimately, the horn sounded, and that was the end of the first preseason game. A 5-2, just butt kicking by the hands of the San Jose Sharks. So am I allowed to panic now? I feel like I should panic. Can you please stop? Just stop. So what's on tap for the Golden Knights next? Well, I'm glad you asked. Preseason game number 2. Tonight, at the time of recording this, it is 6 o'clock, which means the game starts in 2 hours from my time of recording against the Colorado Avalanche. That should be a fun game. I haven't seen the rosters yet. I haven't seen the lineups yet. Still a little bit too early, but I would imagine roughly the same number of NHL regulars, anywhere between 4 and 6. And it's the preseason. It's okay. The record doesn't matter. The Golden Knights had a relatively debatable record last year in the preseason, and look what happened. So it's not time to panic. It is not time to proclaim that the season is lost just because the Golden Knights got, they kind of got kicked around a bit, but it's early. Now, if this happens on, October 10th, well, that's a whole other conversation. But it is early. The lines are still far from complete. And at this point, we're just trying to see what the organization's got coming. So, ultimately, who cares? With that being said, thank you for watching. I appreciate the time I've been able to steal from you from doing whatever you're supposed to be doing right now. Comment down below if you have some choice words about the Golden Knights' performance against the San Jose Sharks, or if you're a Sharks fan, you just want to troll the Golden Knights for something. Can't stop you. Like, subscribe, do all the other things, click the buttons, tell your friends. I'll catch you guys later.